your wife's British. How did you guys end up here? How did that happen? Portugal.
Well, I met her here 2 years after I arrived, but
Okay, so she was already here.
no, I was already here.
Oh,
And then
you
she
were
came,
already
she
here.
was, yes, and she was one of that big contingent of Brits that moved across during COVID, you know.
Okay.
Uh, but the first time I came to this country, I came in 2012 when my girlfriend and we were on a trip through Middle East. And
Okay.
it was bizarre. It was a bizarre trip. I was in a dish dash. She was in a burqa. We had this very weird, interesting trip. And the whole point of this trip was that we were trying to get off the beaten track. And what's illustrative is that we started that trip in Portugal because at the time in 2012, Portugal was off the beaten track.
Yeah.
Um, and so we arrived in Porto and blah blah, had a great time. And then I came back in 2016 when I was working for a company in the UK, and we were looking to set up an office here. And unfortunately, we didn't because you could have touched anything and it would have turned to gold back in 2016. But then I was in 2000. But I'd quit my job and I was traveling through Central Asia, through Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, the stands, and I was living there. And I was writing a
Well,
book about the history of the stands. And I was in Bishkek, which is the capital of Kyrgyzstan, which is, the nature is spectacular, but the city was built by the Soviets, and it was the middle of winter, and it was miserable. And I had a message, and I was very lonely, and I had a message from a friend who was in Lisbon. She said, "Look, can you get to Lisbon?" And I said, "Well," and there was actually a cheap flight from Bishkek to Istanbul to Lisbon. And God, I turned up to Lisbon, and it was the first week of October, and there was this sort of balmy, slightly autumn evening. It was beautiful, and we sat on these stairs, and we had a glass of wine, and there was candle lights flicking, and there were people. There was a guy on a guitar, and I just thought, my God, this city is, spectacular. And it was so I sort of, I sort of thought, right, how do I make this work? And that was kind of when it was.
amazing.
Hmm.
That was but that wasn't your first experience in Portugal. I mean, did you tell the guys when you came the first time, hey, we need to jump here, we need to get in here, and they didn't listen?
The decision was made in the UK, and we were looking at a number of different European cities, and Lisbon just seemed, Lisbon today versus Lisbon in 2016 are quite different cities. It's a
Yeah.
far more worldly city now, whereas it just didn't seem quite large enough at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, really unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Let's go let's go a bit more forward. You've been kind of wooed by Lisbon on this balmy October night with the guitar in the park and all
Yes,
of that.
yes, yes.
What's kept you here? Like, what have been these things that you appreciate about Portugal that's kept you here?
Um, Portugal. I mean, I arrived and that was in 2018, and I moved here in the start of 2019, and the country has
COVID. I mean, just before COVID.
2 years before, yeah, or a year and
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
half.
Yeah.
And the country has just grown so much since then across the country. I mean, this entire country is covered in cranes from north to south. And, when I arrived, there were 450,000 foreigners living in the country, and today there are 1.5 million. And that energy obviously the money as well, and that's an important factor of it because Portugal was, and increasingly less, was a poor country. But there was just so much ideas, so much energy coming into this country. And I've listened to some of your guests, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on in this country, and that enthusiasm and that energy, that's definitely been a thing that has held me here. And of course, my wife and child, who's Portuguese, now stuck. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's just the energy of the place, the growth of the country. This country is dynamic.